I'm Pooja Taparia. I'm the founder and CEO of Arpan, an NGO based in Bombay, India, now known as Mumbai. I'm here to present my thoughts on safeguarding children and how we can do it through schools. Just to give you a small introduction about myself, I started Arpan as an organization about 12 years ago. What our main flagship program is to teach children personal safety skills in schools through the classroom methodology, make parents and teachers aware about the issue of child sexual abuse, and help children participate in their safety. And most importantly, what's unique about Arpan's model is that we are able to intervene in cases where there is ongoing abuse, counsel children, take the support of the family to make sure ongoing abuse stops, as well as counsel children to reduce the impact of sexual abuse. I am taking opportunities at conferences nationally and internationally to talk about how there is an urgent need to mainstream child protection within the education system. And it is up to us as educators, as academicians, as policymakers to see how we can do that to safeguard our children, because it's just not enough to teach maths, science, and language, but very important to teach life skills, including critical thinking, decision making, values such as respect and empathy, if we want to have a generation of children that are going to respect each other, and hopefully we won't have to see Me Too campaigns 2 decades from now. I'm extremely touched by the recent plenary session that we all were at, and students from the Parkland School talking about their experience of the gun shooting that happened last month. I had tears in my eyes. What it means for children today in America to go to school and to actually now have to go through active shooter drills. Had we even heard of such drills ever before? You always heard of fire drills. You heard of drills having to be done in schools where earthquake-prone zones are there. But active shooter drills? Like really? We're in 2018, and do we have to deal with this and create additional trauma for children? What would it mean for those children to go back after 2 weeks of school? How can they focus on studies? How can they focus on learning science and maths when their safety is so compromised and so vulnerable? And so this is one of the issues that now we're grappling with. But for the longest time, we've had issues of child abuse for decades. Sorry. So this is some statistics about the extent of child abuse world over. And it's appalling. 1.7 billion children have experienced interpersonal violence. 1.3 billion boys and girls have experienced corporal punishment at home. 261 million school children have experienced peer violence. 18 million adolescent girls aged between 15 and 19 have experienced sexual abuse. This report is not talking about boys, but let me tell you, not just in my country, in India, where boys are sexually abused more than girls, yes. Across the world, boys are experiencing significant sexual abuse as much as girls as well. A substantial of them are polyvictimized, which means they are going through multiple forms of abuse, including physical, emotional abuse, neglect, as well as sexual abuse. And so this is some recent data from the Ending Violence in Childhood Global Report. There's now a big organization under the UN that's been formed to look at a global forum for ending violence against children. And this is a report they recently published. We all know about the significant impact child abuse can create and have. Moderate to severe post-traumatic stress disorder being a very, very common impact that's seen of child abuse. Fear, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicidal tendencies. I have seen a number of adult survivors show and demonstrate impact even now in their lives. At Arpan, we're having men and women in their 50s and 60s coming for counseling because they can still see impact of child abuse in their lives. Can you imagine? A woman wanting to wash her hands 50 times a day because she feels dirty. a 60-year-old man who till today has not been able to have any kind of intimate relationships because of the experience of sexual abuse. And I can give you more and more such examples and stories. But lives of children are permanently impacted because of sexual abuse. What's the economic burden? So what? So what if lives are affected? Health costs are estimated to 2 to 5% of global GDP. And if you were to take on a highly sensitive analysis, it can go up to $7 trillion. That's 8% of global GDP. That's the economic burden child abuse is creating in our world. So what can we do to safeguard children across the world? And this is not a problem of a particular country. It's every country, children across the world. I think life skills curriculum needs to be incorporated in schools. Child protection policies needs to be incorporated in schools. It's not about child abuse being faced just in schools or at home. It's everywhere. And we need to safeguard children. It's very important that we teach children personal safety skills. Am I saying that the onus of protection has shifted to children? No. The onus of protection still lies with us adults, us academicians, us policymakers, us parents and teachers. But we need the help of children. Clearly, so far, we as adults have helped. Has child abuse declined, and have adults really demonstrated that they've been able to protect children? No. So we need their help. And how? It's very critical to teach children differences between safe and unsafe touches. And they get it. And I say this from experience. As young as children of 6 years to 16 years, important to teach them life skills, not with children, but with adults as well, and adequate knowledge. So we've created 4 to 6 lesson plans, and we went into schools in Bombay to teach them differences between safe and unsafe touches, what can you do when you face an unsafe situation, say no and get away, tell a trusted adult, and keep telling till you get the help you need. These are some basic concepts that we started with grade 1 to 4 and then went on from grade 5 to grade 10. With adolescent children, we are also talking about internet safety. All of us know that internet safety is today a current problem that we're all facing. It's a bomb that's almost blowing away right now as I speak to you and all of us here being today. There are pedophiles posing as friends on the internet, befriending children, and then sexually abusing them. And it's exploding because as and more people are getting onto the mobile, it's going to be even more. In India, today we have 500 million users of smartphones and mobile technology. And we are facing issues with children who are trying and telling us that, there are strangers who are wanting to become friends. What do we do? And we talk about these very things, about do's and don'ts on the internet and how they can be more vigilant on the internet to use it positively. But what are the ways in which harm could be created and how can we protect children from that? And of course, a lot of work with adults as well. So talking to parents and teachers, we also do counseling and intervention with children. And that makes the model very unique. Personal safety education programs are being done in schools in a number of countries. But what's unique about our model is that we give the space for disclosure. Children don't talk about abuse, whether it's physical abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse. If we can create spaces for them to talk about what's going on, we found children talk about their instances. We've had children talk, an 8-year-old girl coming and telling us a shopkeeper who her father had employed was touching her inappropriately every time he would visit home. After the personal safety education program, she immediately called up her father who was traveling. And she said, you know what, Papa, this is what this person is doing. And this father immediately sacked that shopkeeper and made sure the abuse stopped then and there. We've had children walk up to their school principal saying, the bus conductor who picks us up and helps us come into the bus tries and touches us inappropriately by touching our chest. The principal immediately took action. We've had younger siblings help their elder sister who couldn't talk about her abuse that she was going through by her boyfriend take the help of the parent to make sure she gets help. We've had number of cases of incest, even having to deal with the fathers and the uncles who very often are the abusers at home. There are women as well, and globally one sees data around women being perpetrators as well, but proportionately it's men higher. It's a whole range of cases that we've come across, teachers also being there. So we work with also teachers and parents, telling them what child sexual abuse is. We're grappling with just basic information because most people aren't even aware that their children could be sexually abused, or what is sexual abuse. And so we begin literally with that, and then talking to them about what this program is about. So this is really a sense of what the model looks like. It begins with pre-sessions with the principal, with the teachers, parents, and the service staff as well. Because there's non-teaching staff in schools, so it's really important that they be made aware as well. We then do in-class lessons with children, which are, like I said, an hour each of 4 to 6 lesson plans, followed by individual sessions with children, with every single child, to give them a space of disclosure, and then do counseling. So the counselors then step in to counsel the child if a child discloses any kind of sexual abuse, sexual bullying, peer touching, or any other inappropriate behavior. We then have post sessions with teachers and parents as well. What the experience was, how many cases came up, what kind of cases. Because everybody likes to believe it doesn't happen to my child, it doesn't happen to my school. But the reality is that it's very close and in front of them. What we've been able to do is we've been able to work directly with 80,000 children across 140 schools in India so far. We've worked with 60,000 parents and teachers, and we've handled over 6,500 cases of disclosure. That's about 8% of the children that we've worked with. Though studies in India show that sexual abuse is much, much higher. It's about 50% as per the government Indian study. But our work, because it starts with children below the age of 10, and the onset of abuse generally is known to start after 10, we see fewer cases than what statistics show. Also, it could be possible that they've not developed the comfort to tell a stranger who's just come into the school to talk about their experience. We've also trained 3,500 professionals across the country to replicate the program, and we've recently started our international trainings, and we went to Bhutan to train the government counselors in Bhutan. We were invited by UNICEF and the government of Bhutan. So the program is getting replicated. You might want to know what's the impact. So what are the outcomes? We saw some immediate outcomes. A, immediate disclosures. B, it opened up communication channels between children and parents because of the personal safety education program. 3, what we were able to see is that parents had much, much more awareness, almost an 85% increase in awareness on the issue. That's true for teachers as well. But we said, this is our data. What if we brought in an external third party to audit the program? So we invited International Market Research Bureau to audit the personal safety education program. They did a survey with 700 children in 9 schools where ARPAN had conducted the program. And they found that 8% children said they had faced an unsafe situation after our program, of which 90% children were able to seek immediate help and prevent sexual abuse. And this was a study we did in 2014. We then repeated by doing a qualitative study a year ago. And we interviewed parents, teachers, and school children. Parents and teachers reported that they have had a far better understanding about the issue. And this was in a group of schools that had incorporated as a part of curriculum. The aim of teacher training is that once we train the teachers, the school then incorporates it as a part of the life skill curriculum in their school, and the teachers repeat the personal safety messages year on year. Now this group of schools, which is the BCG case study that I'm talking about, has been doing personal safety education with children every year. 31 children interviewed in this case study. 9 children said they had faced an unsafe situation. All 9 said that they were able to prevent. They demonstrated help-seeking behavior, they demonstrated assertive behavior, and sexual abuse was prevented. So these studies clearly show that this kind of a program can help prevent sexual abuse. I'm just talking about a school very much here in Abu Dhabi. We have an ex-colleague from Arpan who's shifted to Abu Dhabi, and she's doing personal safety education in Emirates Future International Academy in Abu Dhabi. So it's as close here as we sit here. She's worked with 1,500 children and also conducted awareness with 260 parents and teachers. Can this be incorporated internationally? Absolutely. It's neutral towards race, gender, country, and a little bit of change that you could want to make to suit it more to your country. We've developed a number of resources, training manuals and training curriculum. So we now have this knowledge institutionalized in lesson plan manuals, which it's very easy for teachers and schools to take on and do the program in the school. We have posters for children, which can be put up very easily in classrooms or in passages of the schools where children passing by can read and remember these personal safety messages on a daily basis. We have the personal safety workbook, a very simple workbook that parents and teachers can use to teach personal safety education in schools. It's currently in English, Hindi, and Marathi, but where we plan to translate it into more languages, or you could take it up and translate it into languages. We have a nice little storybook for pre-primary children, that's ages from 4 to 7, for them to talk about and learn personal safety. Parents or teachers could read the book, and even children can read this book. We have caregivers' handbooks and material to create more awareness amongst parents and teachers on the issue. An FAQ book, which talks more about what parents and teachers can remember about internet safety, or even how do you talk about personal safety in context to disability. And we're now also working with curriculum for special children. I'm sure all of us in schools are also including special children in the classrooms. How do you talk about these concepts to children in the classroom in schools? So we have this training kit which is available, which has all the material and the tools to do this program in schools. We're now in the process of digitalizing our entire curriculum. It'll soon be available to access online. Children would be able to do personal safety curriculum through an interactive methodology, as well as parents and teachers will be able to access these books like a flip book and go through the training curriculum. It's going to get launched in about 2 to 3 weeks. We're just about closing some technical things on it. Our resources have been disseminated to over 56 countries. There are professionals through international conferences who've taken our materials and are going and implementing it. And so the scope and the relevance is tremendous. I really believe that we together can create a safe world for children. It's imperative that we look at child protection as a very critical issue and mainstream it into our schools, either by having a child protection policy, having personal safety education kind of life skills curriculum, making sure there are counselors available to talk to children. Let's not wait for something to happen. Let's not wait for an incident to happen before we talk about the need to talk about personal safety education or any kind of life skill curriculum. I think it's imperative and our duty that we protect children from all kinds of abuse or violence. Thank you. We'll now open it up for question and answers. If you have any questions, you could ask me. Yes, can we have the mic for them, please? Or you could just ask, maybe it'll be easy to hear.
Hi, ma'am. You mentioned a while ago about the incest rape. That's one that was mentioned during the disclosures of the students. I'm interested on if ever you have encountered disclosures like this, how do you go about reporting these cases to higher authorities, official authorities?
Great question. Thank you. The unfortunate part about is that the criminal justice system in India is not a very sensitive one. And while we do have a specific legislation to address child sexual offenses, and ARPAN's been a part of bringing in that legislation, the police is insensitive, the system is insensitive. And so what we do is we tell the family and the child if they want to report the incident, especially the non-offending parents. So let's say if it's a father who's been abusing the daughter, then we ask the wife, the mother, if she wants to report to the police, or the child. If they want to report to the police, we help them through that process and go to the police and file an FIR. But if they don't want to take the legal recourse, we don't force them to do that. Does that answer your question?
So just a follow-up question, because what if the case is really a major one and that need to be responded? So I'm also thinking of how to safeguard also the teachers who's going to report if in case it's a major problem or it's a major case. So on your side, you're not going to report the case if the family wouldn't allow that.
Absolutely, because also if the child does in the statement to the police says that Arpan is lying and nothing like that happened, the case in that case wouldn't go further anyways. So it's very important that the child wants to be a positive witness, give a positive statement that yes, this happened. But very often we've seen families groom their children and say, don't say anything and don't report it. And we've had even children change their statements later on. Ultimately, we found that those cases don't get a logical end. And we've realized there's no point forcing them to report if they don't want to. Because it's very critical they give the truth. And very often they don't. Because the system is a very long one, the time it takes to go through the legal system.
Good morning. My name is Mariam Jam.
Yes.
I work with young girls around the world right now in 58 countries. What I'm wondering about is it any way we can have this as a curriculum? But also, do you work with psychologists, for example, in Africa where we have, as you know, in India, we have a lot of stigma around
Yes.
this subject. So is it any way we can add this as into our curriculums, or
Sure.
do you work with psychologists, for example?
Yes, we could. And we could take that offline and we can talk about how we could partner on this. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, children are critical in our lives, and my biggest anxiety is that how do you get a child to develop that confidence to speak to you or your counselors and disclose the details of what has happened in terms of the assault?
A lot of work is done to train our trainers in such a way that they create a non-judgmental environment in the classroom. We use a lot of classroom management techniques, allow children to have a little bit of fun as well, yet teach, so that the comfort comes and a rapport is built during those 4 to 6 lesson plans that we do in the classroom. After which this trainer is meeting the child on a one-on basis. And it just doesn't begin with, oh, tell me if you've experienced abuse. It begins with, how was it in the classroom? Did you understand what we were trying to learn? Let's repeat some personal safety messages. And then after a few minutes, we ask about, have you experienced any abuse in the past, or is anything ongoing? And so a comforting environment is created to enable disclosure from children. But very often it can be tough. Also, this would also depend on the resilience of children that they have, which is very independent to the program. If children, and we've seen some fantastic cases where, children have said that I'm really glad this program happened and I'm getting this opportunity to share with you. Otherwise, there's nobody in our life who's going to come and teach us these things. We've had hundreds of notes being written by children and given to us saying, thank you for doing this. Otherwise, we would have nobody to talk about this as well. At the same time, these very confident children, we've had a few of them saying, if I share what I want to with you, I hope you will not make me regret telling you. they are very aware that consequences could be different, and they actually tell us in advance that, don't make me regret telling you, but thank you for giving me the opportunity and I'm going to do it. And we reassure children that we will not do anything that you don't want to do. Children are central to the decision making of all cases. In fact, even to tell their parents, we take permission from children that can we call your parent and tell them about this, because it's critical to your future well-being. So the agency is with the child. Otherwise, if we take decisions without making them a partner through the process, they will just get re-betrayed. One betrayal is to go through the abuse. Another betrayal is another adult going and doing something which they are not even aware of or want to do. And so it's handled very, very sensitively. Yes?
How to distinguish, you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Between the safe and unsafe touch. Because some students, some children might start thinking that any touch is suspected unsafe, even if it is a touch from their parents, mom, dad. So sometimes it is very critical. Say, this is safe, this is unsafe. Do you have such
Absolutely.
experience?
Yes, and so we use feelings. A lot of time is spent on teaching children different feelings: sad, angry, scared, happy, confused. And the confused one is where we try and focus on, because unsafe touches can make you feel confused. And so if you're feeling happy with a touch by a mother or a father hugging you, it's a safe touch. If it's a touch that is making you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, it's an unsafe touch. If there is a touch that's making you feel confused, you need to think more about it and talk to somebody about it. Also, with older children, we talk about wanted touches and unwanted touches with a correlation to safe and unsafe. Because very often, some touches could actually be pleasurable, but could be unsafe as well. And then, of course, a general rule that anybody touching your private body parts is not all right. So we help them identify which are the private body parts. Even in normal lives, we don't teach children the names of private body parts. When they're 2, 2.5, we begin with eyes, nose, mouth, chest, whoosh, down, legs, toes, feet. We've completely forgotten a whole part of the body. And that is when the child starts thinking, this is something shady. This is something shameful and we don't need to talk about it because I'm not being taught about my genitals, right? And that's when we start saying that, teaching vocabulary of private body parts is critical. We need to give them the vocabulary. Otherwise, how will they report about it? And so it's a lot of that, with teaching the vocabulary, using feelings to help them identify differences between safe and unsafe touches, and then knowing that it's not all right for someone to look, talk, or touch their private body parts, except to keep them clean and healthy, unless, it's a doctor giving an injection and those kind of settings. So a lot of examples are used to help them understand what is safe and unsafe. Yes.
Good afternoon. Can you please speak to the recovery or restoration process for those that have been touched to bring them back to a place of normalcy?
We do a focus on counseling primarily to help reduce the shame, the guilt, the anxiety, the confusion, the sadness, the anger that a child could be feeling having been abused. And so we use narrative therapy as one of the things. A lot of what we use is the trauma processing therapy called EMDR, which is eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. It's a trauma processing technique that helps children negate the emotions to a certain incident. And so the counseling sessions can vary from 5 sessions to 20 sessions till we get a place of where we've built resilience in children, we've increased their self-esteem, and we see reduced impact of the abuse through counseling. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Sam Williams. Thank you for a session. It was really interesting. I'm particularly interested in the work that you've done with professionals. So taking the learning you've done with young people and applying that to the adults that are engaging with young people. I work for an international organisation that supports adults working with young people, and I think it's a big issue globally. I'm just wondering whether you've had any experience or insights from doing that work, because you talked about working with professionals. That's something that's...
Yes, thank you. So we go and do a 5-day training with teachers, NGO professionals, counselors on the issue of child sexual abuse. We begin with talking about gender, power, and sexuality, because that really builds the premise to the understanding of the issue. Because if we don't understand power and sexuality and gender, we wouldn't really even understand the issue of child sexual abuse. And so we begin with that in the training, and then we go on to talk about how do we understand child sexual abuse, the various aspects of it, contact, non-contact. Then we talk about neurobiology. And we found that that has tremendous impact, because when you understand how abuse affects the brain is when you really understand what is the impact of that trauma. And so we talk about how the amygdala in the brain fires up when there is an instance of abuse. How does that then affect the conscious and the subconscious, the frontal cortex of the brain? Because in an event of a traumatic event, the frontal cortex shuts down and the amygdala fires up. And then how do we have a flight, freeze, fight, or any of these 5 responses that's seen in trauma? And so that builds the understanding of professionals of, what is really the impact. And then we go on to teaching our experiences in the classroom by sharing it through manuals, and they create the lesson plans then and there during the training. It's a very interesting experience. One, primarily, that whenever we work with a group of adults, and you talk about impact, at least on half of their faces you see that they are able to correlate their own experiences. And I think one is that the first step becomes articulation of their own experience of sexual abuse as children. Then it becomes about, okay, what can we do about it? And so that's when we get into the training part of the lesson plans and the counseling that they can do. I feel that it's been an overall very interesting experience. We grapple with there not being enough professional counselors and psychotherapists, because that field is extremely niche. But we are also heartened to see that teachers are willing to take on at least the first level counseling that they can provide to children. So we're training teachers on just basic counseling skills as well that they can do and support to give first level support to children. And it's been a mixed experience. We've had organizations like an education academy called Z-Learn that's taken the program, trained their master trainers through us, and now across India, in their 1,500 schools, they are teaching personal safety education. And they are handling cases as well. And so we have mixed responses. In some trainings, we've done the training and then they've not implemented in the school as well. I think it's a lot dependent on that school's motivation to protect children and make this as a part of curriculum. And I think that's really the key. How motivated are we to do this? And it does come with challenges. It does come with challenges of telling parents about it, getting them on board as well. Because very often parents can feel, oh, what are you teaching my child? I'm not so comfortable. Does a 6-year-old need to know about names of private body parts? And then you go through that whole rationalization process, why it's important, etc. But I think motivation is very key. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Yes?
Thanks for speaking. I'm a designer at Apple. So I'm a terrible teacher. I'm terrible at speaking, but I can make your phone. I had a question about internet abuse.
Yes.
What would you like companies like Apple and Google and Facebook to do to try to help the fight against internet abuse and make that better?
I think the massive job of screening content, which YouTube, Google, all of them are doing, but I think it just needs to be stepped up to another level altogether. But also at the policy level, like for instance, if you report content to Facebook today, they don't necessarily take immediate action. And when I read through the policy of Facebook, I found that it doesn't really completely adhere to the child protection standards. An international body of telecom companies, GMSA, is now addressing this. And they are working with companies like organizations like Internet Watch Foundation based in the UK. They're bringing countries together to address this problem globally. So it's not just Google, Facebook, but telecom companies like AT&T, Vodafone, all of them coming together to do much better screening that they need to do to take off imagery and videos that is inappropriate. But at the speed at which content gets uploaded, it's much lesser speed at which it gets screened and taken down. So we just need to come to up to speed for that. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being such active listeners and for your questions. I have some brochures if you would want to pick up or look at the books that we have. Thank you very much.